I should come up with a theme song, maybe improve the production quality a little bit. But yeah, that was basically Flight of the Conchords theme song without the bass line or Digio Casio thing that Brett plays. So we'll work on that. Anyway, it's May 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo to all of the folks that celebrate that holiday watching, and the folks that love margaritas like myself. I'll be having one at whatever time is acceptable to start having one. TBD. So, May 5th, 2020, I'm Foster Joseph Sayers III, and this is Sayers Soapbox. Today, we're going to talk about voting and voter rights. I've seen a lot of posts lately, and there's two themes. One is relative to voter IDs, and this idea that you have to show an ID to buy cigarettes and do all these other stupid things, and so it should be appropriate to have to show one to vote. And then the other is this idea that standing in line for hours on end should be acceptable, and that people should stop complaining because they have to stand in line for other things. Both of these things are total nonsense, and I wanted to talk about why today. So, voter ID. Why has it been struck down by various federal courts, and why is it bad? Well, voting is a constitutional right, right? It's a cornerstone of our democracy, and for the conservatives who love to say, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Yeah, got it. We're a republic, which is a form of democracy. Thanks. Okay. A constitutional right is one that should be exercised with absolutely no limitations unless there is an express and really compelling matter of public policy that would, rise to the level of somehow impacting the way that you exercise your right. And so with voter IDs, right, you can prove your identity many other ways, providing, a piece of mail with your name and address on it, right? And so we have plenty of means, right, for people to verify their identity. And so when you look at a voter ID, that's something where we're talking about making people pay for this identification, and recognizing that the poor and the minority populations that are often part of that socioeconomic class are going to be disenfranchised as a result of that. And when you look, such as in North Carolina, you can find that was in fact part of the intent of the legislature in enacting those voter ID laws. That's kind of older news. Newer on the discussion is this idea that we should be willing to wait in line, and that additionally, that mail voting is bad and is susceptible to fraud, and that we shouldn't allow it. So, and President Trump himself recently has acknowledged publicly that Republicans would not be able to win if they did not resort to voter suppression, right? This strategy is well known. And so recently, Republican states, states with Republican-controlled legislatures, have been closing polling locations and closing them in minority areas, right? And they're doing that to make it harder for those people to vote. Less access to polling locations means longer lines, means more difficulty in voting, especially when so much of our electorate is the working class, right? They can't take off of work. They're living paycheck to paycheck. This is the scenario that those powers that be want to effectuate. They want to put people in a position where they cannot exercise their right to vote. So let's look at this idea. First of all, there's no proof, and has never been, of any fraud by voter mail. And let's talk about why voting by mail is a good thing. It's a good thing because there are people who are physically unable to get to a polling location. They could have been disabled from an accident, from serving our country in a war, or they may be very elderly and unable to drive. However, these people are perfectly in good standing as citizens and should have no reason not to vote by mail, right? We have to think about the vulnerable in our society when we think about these policies. But let's think more deeply, right? Why would it be that we would want people to vote less, and why would we want that to be something where we're creating fear around this idea of voting by mail? And I personally have a theory that Congress does not want to lose its power in the face of the modern world that we're living in today. Because let's think about it. I file my tax return online, right? That contains my most sacred and personal information. It's got my social security number on it. It's got my adjusted gross income on it. It's got the social security numbers of my family on it. And I'm able to securely file that online every year. No fraud takes place. I get my refund or don't, um, depending on how good I was figuring out my exemptions. So consider that our leaders are so few and are making policy for 300 million people. Imagine if those people had a direct say on issues. We are no longer the country that was declared independent in 1776, right? It's 2020. And a lot of this stuff, we don't need someone who is paid a bunch of money and who is sent to Washington and subjected to all of these corporate interests to make decisions for us. We could vote online securely on many things. There are things, right, that because of their nature, like national security, that wouldn't be necessarily appropriate for individual lay citizens to make decisions on. But when it comes to how our money is spent on those things, not necessarily how it's spent, but just is there a budget for this? That's something that we could very well decide, and that's something that they don't want us to decide because controlling that money is what gives them power. So when you think about voting rights and you think about, oh, well, I don't really want, voter mail or I don't want online voting, realizing that you're just suppressing your own voice. So voting rights, they're important, they're fundamental to our democracy, and we should all support them being as expanded as possible. I'll do another episode in the future on how outdated our current system of voting and democracy is. But thanks for listening. You can like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks. Bye.